Phoenix Resurrection. There it is.
Here we go. All right. Welcome, everybody, to the Marvel Minute special New Year's edition. We did not have a vote up this week, so there's not really anything for me to ramble through as far as that goes. I picked for everybody Phoenix Resurrection, the Return of Jean Grey #1, kind of assuming in my own way that would probably win anyways. So that's what we went with because it was a tough week of books anyway. Besides that one, and really Thanos, and Thanos never wins the poor vote, so we picked it for you. But anyway, we got writer Matt Rosenberg on this title. Art team of Lionel Francis Shue, Gary Allengian, and Rochelle Rosenberg. I wonder if they're related. Are they related? Are they married?
I don't think so. Matt Rosenberg's pretty young, so
okay.
And she's been around for a while.
Maybe just a coincidence. Maybe brother sister. Who knows? We don't research too much here unless it's actual comic content related, which Trevor is taking care of here to help my brain understand what's going on in this issue. Anyway, let's get into our blurb. We'll tell you what I understand is going on. Trevor's going to fill in some blanks, which is why he's always along on this journey with me. And without further ado, here we go. Well, here it is, folks. Years and an 11-issue mini/maxi series, whatever people call that. In the books, we have the Return of Jean Grey in front of us. So which one are we getting here? The good-natured Jean of old, or the bloodthirsty, mildly misunderstood force of the true Phoenix? Let's get to it and possibly begin to find out in this newest miniseries that begins weekly right now. So we start things off, and the issue begins in this very specific location of New York, Annandale on the Hudson, it's called. And there's just two kids. They're kind of old enough to ride bikes around on their own. They're just pedaling on through this town. And they stumble upon and begin to check on what appears to just be somebody hurt, kind of a red-haired looking girl, laying on the ground. Appears to be like bleeding from the head. I wasn't sure if that was just like some crazy hair at first, but no, it's blood. And as they approach her and begin checking on her, her eyes open and just appear to be all black. And she pops up speaking backwards. And what it boils down to, and what I think she says, is we were better off dead, right?
Yep.
Yeah, because I'm admittedly awful when it comes to backward talk. I read it at first the first couple times. I'm like, dead off, better we were. I'm like, I don't understand what she's telling me.
So it's completely backwards.
Yeah, she's pulling a little bit of a Zatanna on us, but not really. Yeah, basically it's Zatanna. That's how Zatanna talks when she's doing her spells, right?
Kinda. If it was Zatanna, it would be like spelled backwards but forwards. Like this is backwards and in reverse. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I always read Zatanna. I never know if I'm reading Zatanna's right either. Unless it's one word, then I'm like, yeah, got it. But anyway, we see this girl pop up and she distracts the kids, and then there's somebody else, a separate girl, that comes up from behind them. And they both kind of resemble Jean Grey. And Trevor's going to tell me why they're not the same person in a second here, I think. But
well, yeah.
This girl that walks up behind them, the non-injured one, says, "Do you want to play frisbee?" And she's got like a dead pigeon in her hand. These kids turn back around to see the hurt girl is no longer there. This girl throws the pigeon in the air, and the hurt girl kind of appears out of what the pigeon was. Help me out here because I'm trying to explain something really fucked up that went on.
So I'm assuming the girl on the ground represents her friend when Jean Grey first got her powers, her friend Annie, when she got hit by a car when they were playing in the street.
Okay. And so they just look like they're out of coincidence. They're just, but they were buddies.
Yeah, like the girl on the ground kind of has brownish hair. It looks red because of the blood, but then Jean shows up with the fire red hair, and then I think the bird is kind of like symbolism. Like a phoenix is a bird, and then it's dead and it rises. So like a phoenix rising, and then she herself rises out of the air. And you get all
Yeah,
the sparks from the bird as it's flying.
right. So this girl that's rising out of the air says, "Watch out!" And these two kids that were checking on her are like trying to run out of the area and get the hell out of Dodge. Basically, they're freaked out, have no idea what's going on. I'm in their boat, and we then visit 2 hours later as the X-Men arrive at the same location, and Prestige kind of mentions right off the bat that she used to have family in this exact area. Now, isn't Prestige like a future kid of Scott and Jean, or is it a
Yes,
sister?
it's their daughter.
Okay, okay.
Um, which I believe like Jean's family was from around there. So it's kind of crazy because like as the issue starts and like you get the symbolism of like a phoenix rising, you also get the symbolism of like the beginning from kind of the same thing happening. Like the little girl dead in the street, hit by a car. You know what I mean?
Yeah, almost like the origin is taking place again. Um,
Yes.
Possibly, maybe at an accelerated rate, which we'll get to in a second here. Because once Prestige mentions that, they walk up to the scene that occurred, and they start chit chatting with the cops. It's a relatively friendly exchange for an X-Men police officer exchange for the most part, and they kind
Yeah.
of mention some weirdness that went down there. Um, Not really being too specific until the X-Men talk them into walking them over to what occurred. While this all happens, Kurt takes Rachel back to the plane. Like she starts repeating some of what that girl that rose from the injury said backwards. And she also says it backwards here. Better off dead, like part of it, not the whole thing. But Kurt's like, why don't we get you back to the plane? Because she's got a bloody nose. She mentioned she's not feeling well. Um, and then the rest of the team approaches what were the two kids on the bikes, stumbling upon this scene kind of innocently, that appear to have the same injuries the girl they found had. They're hovering a little bit above the ground, and Wolverine, Old Man Logan, kind of mentions, you're right. This is, weird as hell. Um, they don't really have too much of an idea of what all went down. Really, nobody, not the X-Men, not these cops especially. And that's our title page. It takes us there. Um, yeah, anything you want to mention about what they all stumble into here? I mean, it's pretty vague, but that's not really a difficult part to understand unless I miss some symbolism there or something.
Oh no.
Okay.
That's pretty much is what it is. I like that it was a very, very like weird and eerie beginning.
Yeah. It is really strange. I almost and this is how I kind of feel about some of my end thoughts, but like if it wasn't Rosenberg, because I like Rosenberg's stories, and he's built up a little goodwill from like getting me to like and read books that I wouldn't necessarily check out. But if it was like somebody else I didn't wouldn't trust as much as a writer, I think I would like definitely have a harder time with this by the end of it than I do. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
because he knows what he's doing and he's wrote some good comics, especially at Marvel, that like give him a little leeway that this will all come together in the end, and he knows what the hell he's doing. Because then we go
He
back.
made me
Go
he
ahead.
made me
Sorry.
like characters that I hate. So it's
Yeah,
like
yeah. That's what I'm saying. Like I'm not a huge Jean Grey fan, but if he's gonna do this sweet mystery around it, it might suck you in a bit. Um, So back at the Xavier Institute, they're just at the regular school right now. Kitty calls this giant gathering of like every X-Men ever. Like the Gen X team, you got the blue team, the gold team, the uncanny mutants, you got the Weapon X team, everybody. And she,
X Factor people.
yeah, there's like it's a whole bunch of cameos here. Strong guy, the who's who of the teams, and she tries to fill everybody in best she knows about what's going down before she eventually just turns it over to Beast, and he can break it down in better understanding. Really, he mentions how the kids they found were catatonic, kind of bleeding from the head with no wounds. While Kitty mentions at the same time Rachel was affected by something just by being in the area. They're not really connecting anything about how she mentioned she used to live here, really, just kind of making the connection that something weird all went down. These kids were hurt. Rachel was fucked up a little bit. Um, Beast mentions, along with Kitty, there's kind of three unique energy readings that have popped up uh, loosely connected to this situation, which had a similar reading, and they're all around the globe. Um, they've been tracked to one being in Manhattan, one being in France, and one being way up north in the pole. Kitty decides to split up three teams, and they're all going to head to these locations simultaneously to investigate what's up ASAP. And everybody else is just to kind of stay back and keep a low profile, not mention anything about this, not freak out until they get a better understanding. So basically, the third act of the issue kind of jumps around a lot. Well, kind of this middle act, really. As we visit the different teams, you got the gold team, the blue team, and the Weapon X team that they focus on, really. The gold team is first as they enter this Hellfire Club mansion. It's supposedly at first deserted, like looks all old and like nobody's been there forever, until they're quickly attacked and surrounded by a bunch of Hellfire guards in their gear. Um, I'm just going to kind of follow the different teams instead of jumping around to what's going on simultaneously. So then Jubilee kind of bites the neck of one of these Hellfire guards, and remember, everybody, she's a vampire. That's why she did that. She's not a cannibal. Well, kind of a cannibal, but she reveals from this bite that they aren't human. And then the fight kind of continues from there as Kitty gives the order to everybody to use whatever force is necessary since they're not killing human beings. But the group eventually becomes overwhelmed by just sheer numbers, and Colossus has to bust out of just the side of the wall because they mentioned how the doorway also appeared to disappear. Um, the blue team's kind of also in a ruckus as they're teamed up with Rogue in France. She's attacked by, I had no idea who this monster was, admittedly, at first, until she fills us in later. It kind of knocks her out of the fight for a second before she rejoins to then give the thing a knockdown blow back. Before she reveals that, like, it sucks life force out of people. And it was an old acolyte of Magneto's named Seamus something is exactly what she says. I don't know if you got anything to mention about this guy I don't know about. Maybe we'll do him on the midpoint facts.
His name was Seamus Mellencamp. He was one of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants.
Yeah, he's kind of got like Rogue's powers. Like,
Oh no, he was one of the acolytes. My bad. He was one of the acolytes.
he like Rogue mentions how her powers are. He's immune to them basically, but not immune to being slugged the fuck out. Uh, uh, but yeah, he's got a little bit of Rogue's powers. It seems like something like that, like sucks life force out of people.
Yeah, he can drain life force. He's also got like strength, speed, agility, and like invulnerability, shit like that.
Yeah. And then we finally check in on the Weapon X team. And they're up in the North Pole. They kind of notice somebody approaching them from us off in the distance. And it appears to be a classic version of Wolverine. I thought it was, the real one that's been kind of stumbling around of late, but that don't really appear to be the case. It initially attacks Sabretooth and then kind of starts knocking everybody out with relative ease. It looks like we're about to get an Old Man Logan versus Logan battle when simultaneously all the enemies that were fighting the different teams around the world all disappear at the same time, just vanish. Everybody begins to look up shortly after this happens, and all the teams appear to see the same thing across the entire world with this very bright, shining light up in the sky, right? Everybody's seeing that?
Everybody's seeing that at the
Yep.
same time.
Okay. Because that's what I understood. I'm glad you backed me up there. Then we move the story forward to this diner, which is also seeing this giant phoenix-esque light in the sky. This place is just labeled elsewhere. So I'm kind of wondering if they're stating it's like elsewhere in that place in New York we first peeked on in the beginning, or just an unnamed elsewhere as of right now.
Well, there's a funny theory about that, but I'll talk about that towards the end.
Okay. Uh so anyway, we see these waitresses and they're all looking up in the sky. Um it's a strange scene because at least what I think to be two people when they walk back in, one being the waitress, one being a customer, at least resemble loosely Jean Grey to me. Um, so as everyone comes back inside, they just kind of appear to go about their business as usual, discussing what went down as they saw it. Nobody kind of really comes to a consensus on the matter. Anybody with too crazy of an idea is kind of mocked by this one Jean Grey looking girl sitting at the restaurant bar. Um, and it, again, everybody just kind of moves on and resumes their day, I guess. We revisit this one waitress that resembles Jean, who's walking home late that night. She ends up arriving home and talking with these people who I guess are her parents. And as she's feeding, like, this red bird in a cage, a cracker, she kind of mentions what she saw, and then mentions how she's not feeling great, and probably won't eat tonight. She's just going to go lay down. And then they kind of counter her with saying, whoa, we got somebody coming by that was going to eat. And just then there's like a knock at the door, and this Jean opens the door to reveal our cliffhanger, which is a glasses up Scott Summers, the classic red shades with flowers in his hands. And that's how the issue concludes. So yeah, I don't know. Fill some blanks in there for me before we buy, borrow, or forget this bad boy.
I was just looking at the issue where I was telling you before we started that Uncanny X-Men 300 is where they fought in that French castle where Rogue and X-Men Blue Team fought Sheamus. That's where Jean Grey fought Sheamus in Uncanny X-Men 300. And I was just getting freshened up on the acolytes. They were from that Chris Claremont Jim Lee story for when X-Men #1 in like 1991 with that guy Cortez who would power up Magneto
Yeah.
when he had Asteroid M hanging above the Earth. But anyway, uh, would you say again? Say that again. Would you want me?
I don't know. I was just you said you kind of had a theory about all these people I thought looked
Oh
like
yeah, yeah,
Gene, and
yeah. So
like
there's
this
this cool theory on the
elsewhere
internet.
diner that we visit.
Yeah, there's this cool theory on the internet that I read on the site called Xavier Files, and it has to do with um, the Jean Grey solo series right now. So in Jean Grey #10, she kind of died. The
Hmm.
Phoenix killed her. So there's this theory that she's in this like prison, trapped where all the former hosts of the Phoenix are trapped, and like they think that elsewhere is that prison. So like where Jean Grey is, like with the diner, where Banshee is,
Was
um,
that who was sitting
you
at the
know,
diner she served?
yeah, that was Banshee, which is kind
Okay.
of cool because like as she left the diner and walked by that church, they had that what's it called, that sign
Yeah, the church
on
sign, the Bible
yeah,
quote.
from Revelations, because he was the horseman of death for the Apocalypse twins and Rick Remender's Uncanny Avengers story, and when he got resurrected. So it was like a cool nod to that.
Yeah. So were there two Genes at
Um,
this? Like, because there look like multiple versions of Gene in this restaurant, right? Or is that just me?
I think that's just you.
Okay. Yeah,
'Cause
because the one chick has red hair and it's
well,
like a shorter cut.
this is what I think is like. Remember when in the beginning, they kind of recreated the scene where Jean and her friend Annie, when she got her powers, she got hit by the car, right? So
Yeah, yeah.
the place is called Annie's Diner, and the manager of the diner's name is Annie, and then Jean works in the diner, so that's like her
Okay.
childhood friend owns and runs this diner, and Jean works for her as a waitress, which is kind of
Gotcha.
crazy. Like the
Okay.
future that never happened for her.
Yeah, I keep mixing up this friend whose kind of hair is not as bright red as Jean's and more brownish, but I don't know. Their faces are kind of like that, come to a point in the chin, and it's confusing me, I guess. I don't
Yeah.
know. But anyway, yeah, we're gonna buy, borrow, or forget this. I don't know. This was pretty good. I mean, it's weird and it's an intriguing, and like Trevitt said, you need to know a little bit of the backstory to this entire Phoenix saga, and not the movie version of it all. So if you're familiar
Yeah.
with the X-Men 2 and the movie versions of the Phoenix, like you need to know the Claremont stuff and the classic Phoenix stuff and the locations and all that to really get everything out of it. But if you want to do your research here, and even if you don't, I'm pretty sure they're going to spell a lot of it out, maybe with some editor's notes or through story dialogue, because they weren't afraid to do a little explaining in this issue, or a little bit of talking with some word bubbles, being a little bit longer. So I think it all might come out by the end. But like Trevor said, it's kind of like a Twin Peaks thing going on here. You're not sure if they're truly in a reality that the X-Men are connected to on Earth, or if it's kind of like an offshoot prison. But I want to tune back in and find out, as they say. And like I said, Matthew Rosenberg from previous stories and arcs that he's done for Marvel, even though he's still relatively new, has earned a little bit of goodwill for me, at least to see it through to the middle, to see if I can, make some sense of it and really dig in and enjoy it to the fullest extent. So I'm right now leaning towards a buy. I'm going to give it a buy, but I can see by the middle if I'm not getting any answers, like if it gets a little too Mr. Miracle-y for me, I could
He
be out.
drags
But
on.
right, yeah, I think just because it's so short, like it's only what, 5 issues, 4 issue miniseries,
Yeah, just
um,
5 issues.
that we're going to get right to the point right away and start getting some answers here. So as long as they don't Spider-Man to it, we should be in good shape.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, God.
but yeah, what do you think? I'm going to lean towards a buy for right now. That's my initial diagnosis after I read it. I was intrigued and interested.
I like that it's weekly too, so it'll never
Yeah,
feel
I know.
dragged out no matter
I'm a
what.
fan of that. Like, I don't have so much of a problem with the crossovers when they just get it done and out of the way in 5 books in 5 weeks.
Yeah, yeah. I really do like that too. Like, it and they come prepared, so there's no delays. Like before they
Yeah,
release the books, it's already in the can, so like it can
yeah,
just all come. That Doctor Strange Damnation thing, that's going to be weekly too. That 5 issue miniseries. So
yeah. It's a little longer though. It's going to be like
yeah.
2 months though, over.
Well, I think the way they arranged it, yeah, it's going to be 2 months, but I think it'll carry on in other books as well. But I thought I heard it was going to be weekly or bi-weekly or something. But I really did enjoy this issue. I love the Twin Peaks vibe. I love all the deep X-Men cuts. Like the more I read it like 3 times, and the more I read it, and the more I researched it, the more I enjoyed it, and the more like when I found out the relevancy of like all the because like I can see because there were some reviews that were bad because people were not bad, but like they were just decent because people didn't see the relevance of certain parts of the book. Like the North Pole is where Jean died in Phoenix End Song, and then the castle in France from Uncanny X-Men 300, and the Hellfire Club from the Dark Phoenix saga. And there's all subtle hints and weird things throughout the history of throughout the issue, and like characters showing up, like Cyclops showing up at the end as like her boyfriend. So like at the end, it's kind of like Jean. It's kind of almost like Jean rewriting her history, to have the perfect life that she always wanted. So like instead of her friend dying in that car accident, she ended up running the diner in like the town that she grew up in, and Jean ends up being like the waitress there and having this simple life where she has dinner with her parents, and Scott's her boyfriend and he comes over for dinner. You know what I mean? Instead of having the
Yeah.
tragic, horrible life and multiple ends that she ended up having because of the Phoenix. Uh, I loved it. I thought it was very, very smart, very, very well thought out and well written. Matthew Rosenberg has a real good knack for dialogue and knowing his characters, and you could tell that he really knows X-Men history and knows Jean Grey. He had that nice letter at the end of the issue that said what Jean Grey meant to him in his life and whatnot, and how she's one of his favorite characters, and he wanted to do her justice in this series, and he really did. And I can tell that it's just going to get deeper and better as it goes along. The art was good. It's some of the clearest, sharpest art I've seen Leniel Francis Yu do in a little bit, because some of his stuff seems like a little rushed sometimes, and because he has that habit of like making the faces have too much shadow under the eyes and blacking out characters' eyes and whatnot. But he didn't do that too much here. He did very clear, clean faces. So it's definitely a buy for me. I can't wait to see the next issue. I'm very intrigued. Like the mystery has me locked in. I'm a big Twin Peaks fan, so it really resonated with me. Can't wait.
Yeah, like I said, I hope we get some clarification and answers. But yeah, right now I'm on board, so I agree with you. We're agreeing on a buy, and we'll get votes back in working order for next week with holidays all over and all that stuff out of the way, and getting back on a normal schedule. But yeah, we got a few more Marvel books we'll talk this week. One from last week we didn't get to cover. Tales of Suspense, and then Spider-Man 2 and Thanos 14 are the books we're going to be covering on that. So find us there on the Marvel Madness Comics podcast.
That's
But we're going
another
to sign up.
that's
What?
another
Go ahead.
Rosenberg book. Tales of
Yeah,
Suspense.
no, he writes a ton of books. But yeah, we're going to wrap this up, and we will talk to you guys later. Peace out.
Peace.